Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, why is it so difficult for Montgomery County to hire a county health officer? MCPS considering reinstating mask mandate in schools as COVID cases spike. Cars still dominate commuting despite efforts by government for more mass transit, and Montgomery County officials acknowledge a rise in team-related crime. So what are they going to do about it? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by former County Council member Mike Knapp and president of the Montgomery County Federation of Republican Women, Laurie Halverson. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. After the Omicron COVID variant swept through the county last winter, many thought that COVID was now just a very painful memory. But unfortunately, just like the horror movie villains, it keeps coming back from the dead. You know, Mike, the first Jaws movie was scary and fun, but by the time the Sharknado 5 was released, the genre had run its course. Now there's been an uptick in new COVID cases. So what should be the appropriate response for the county for this disease that seems to have no end?
Well, it's really interesting. The challenge we have is that at least Sharknado we could turn off or choose not to watch. This one just keeps showing up whether we want to or not. I think people are starting to get in a really challenging situation as far as creating whether you want to call it a mandate or a guidance that says people should be masking. The thing I've noticed, which has been interesting, so we just completed Montgomery College graduation today, was a number of people who are just taking it upon themselves. Really, people, if they're in a situation that they feel they're compromised, or they feel that just because there are a lot of people in a single place are wearing masks. And I think that is a gratifying thing to see. We just traveled last week to another graduation, and again, a number of people were masking. We're self-selecting to do that, and I think that you're seeing more and more people recognizing the number of folks that they know that have been exposed and are contracting COVID, who are taking it upon themselves to set it up for themselves, a way to make themselves safer. And I think that's a good thing, because I don't think that for the county to say, okay, we're going to mask up again, that you're going to get much receptivity, unfortunately.
Well, we're going to deal with that part of it later on in the segment, but I think it's wonderful to hear that the population or the populace has made their own decision and choices regarding masks or not to mask, and that there's a level of tolerance whether you choose to mask or not to mask. So I think that's tremendous. I hope our elected leaders also hear that. And it worries me, Laurie, because, you know, while the case numbers are approaching the moderate levels that have been established by the county executive, you know, the hospitalization rate is very low. In fact, the average number of hospital beds in the county being utilized by COVID patients for the last 7 days is less than the 10% of capacity. So should the county just, you know, take a chill and be cautious before it reinstitutes any more mask mandates?
Casey, I think you asked me the same question months ago in the very big uptick that we had. And it was, you know, the hospitalization rate was low at the time, and it did go up some, of course, but it wasn't as bad as the first time. I think, I don't think we need to institute a mask mandate now. People need to continue with this nice break that we've had and continue. I don't think we should bring back the mask mandate. I think that they're pointing to the CDC studies that are listed, or there's studies listed on the CDC website. And I've seen other articles, such as from The Atlantic, which refutes a lot of the information that's in some of these studies, that there's a lot of flaws in those studies. So I don't know if we can necessarily rely on the studies that we read when we look at the CDC website. Also, cases went up even when we had the mask mandate. They're going to go up anyway, and then they're going to go down anyway, regardless. There was another study that recently was published that said where they had 895 school districts that were tested, and there were COVID incidents, or when COVID incidents, I'm sorry, that the districts where there were no mandates to not have school, or I'm sorry, I need to go back again. when there was virtual versus where there was in person, there was no statistical difference in the number of COVID incidents. So I think that's a very important study to see that we needed to have our kids back in school, and they should be in school in a natural way where you can see someone's face. And you look at other, World Health Organization does not recommend masks for children under 6. So, there's just a lot of information out there. We need to
but there's still a lot of pressure to, especially when we look at the schools. Mike, I'm going to pivot for a second because, it seems that, MCPS is trying to balance itself on this, but I've heard reports that it's almost being done on a school by school basis, that the principal is actually the one making the decision. Is that the right way to go?
It actually might be. I mean, because what you're seeing is you're having schools that are seeing incidences. You're seeing schools that are having fewer incidents. I've seen some schools where they've had 30 and 40% of their population that are having COVID or staying home, and you got others where you're not seeing it. And so rather than trying to come up with a blanket mandate and trying to figure out how this is going to work across 205 different schools in Montgomery County, let people on the ground be able to make those decisions as they see the situation unfolding in front of them. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that, unlike where we were 2 years ago, where the only thing we had was to try and mask and avoid each other, we have vaccines, we have boosters, we have a variety of things at our disposal in ways that we didn't before. And so it's not a, kind of single thing that we do. It's going to be a variety of things, and people need to continue to focus on making sure they're availing themselves of the vaccines that are there, being cautious in the situations that they're in, and then recognizing what's happening on the ground where they happen to be and react accordingly. And so I think we know a lot. Let's learn. Let's take advantage of what we've learned.
Well, I'm going to follow up with you, Mike, because we're running out of time in this segment. But would be the political fallout if the county executive council reinstituted an indoor mask mandate before the primary?
Oh, I think it'd be a challenge, although, you haven't had the backlash here in Montgomery County that we've seen other places. I think there would be frustration, but I continue to be intrigued, and impressed probably isn't the right word, but fascinated by how we in Montgomery County have tended to be more circumspect than other communities I've read about or seen, where people are okay. I don't think that we're excited about a mask mandate, but if the numbers are such that are out there, I think you wouldn't have the backlash you would see other places. And so I don't think you'd see as much in the poll as you'd expect.
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because this deals also with the health issue. And the next question all deals with the health issues. I said, Laurie, this week it was announced that for the third time, Montgomery County's top pick to fill the vacancy created when former health officer Travis Gales decamped for San Francisco has backed out of the running. Nobody wants to come here, Laurie. Why is it such a difficult position to fill? Now, the rumor going around is that the position doesn't pay enough given the high cost of local living.
I understand that the salaries should be close to $250,000, which doesn't seem a lot less than, I think that's a pretty good salary, actually. So I don't think that's the main reason. I think part of the reason, which nobody seems to talk about, is that the Board of Health is all of the county council members who not one of them is a health expert. And how can you be a health officer if you have to listen to politicians to guide you when none of them have a background in that area? So I think they should just, maybe reconfigure how they're doing this and have a, hire a board of health, or maybe you could get a volunteer board of health, which includes doctors, scientists, a number of people who are experts on the topic. Then maybe it would be more likely someone would come in. There's also an issue with how the Montgomery County has to work with the Maryland State Secretary of Health. And that person was appointed by Hogan, who's a Republican. And then we have Mark Elrich, who's a Democrat. So we've got, I think, a little bit of
all right, well,
problems
it's going
there.
to resolve itself very quickly. And Mike, Laurie just dissed you. She just
well, I was going to say,
smacked you upside the head as a former council member. Said you don't know anything.
He's a prior county council member, so I'm not cutting him down.
The nice thing is that actually, my experience has been that the county health officer is the person who helps to inform the board of health, which unfortunately, to the point that you raised, Laurie, is state statute. So that's who determines and designates who the county board of health is. I think the challenge is twofold. One, we've seen across the country that county health officers have been held out as the example of where there've been problems with artillery. They've been threatened. There have been a lot of examples. So I think just by nature of the position, a lot of people aren't looking to be a county health officer any place. And then I think when Mark Elrich came into office, he reduced a number of the salaries from where they were to a much lower figure. And I think that, and I don't know what the salary number is for the current county health officer, but I'm pretty sure it's less than it was previously, just because all of the other positions have been decreased. And so I think when you look at the salary, you look at the challenges with the position, and you look at the fact that they only get to make some of the decisions. They are trying to work within a broader framework. I think it's a hard position to fill for everybody. And I think we're just like much of the rest of the country.
Well, why don't we just appoint the acting health officer, Dr. James Bridgers, to the position?
Maybe he doesn't want the job.
Number 4.
I know that.
Number 4.
I don't know.
He's supposed.
We're running
okay.
out. We got to go to break. I'm sorry. Okay. When we come back from this short break, county officials acknowledge a rise in teen-related crime, but what are they doing about it? Stay tuned. You'll find out. And welcome back. No matter what your daily news source may be, there's been an alarming increase in the number of stories reporting crimes involving teenagers. As reported on WTOP radio, over the past several months, Montgomery County has seen a number of arrests for violent crime involving teens. Earlier this month, a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old were charged with murder of a 21-year-old man in the county. And earlier this week, police announced the arrest of a 17-year-old in the fatal stabbing of Jalen Jones. And both these guys were classmates at Northwest High School. So Mike, county officials have announced that they're holding a meeting next week to address these issues. Is the county executive and the council serious about these issues, or is this just, to let pressure off them because of the headlines?
Well, I mean, I think if any time that the only answer you've got is a meeting, you're not relieving any pressure. You're saying you're starting to at least understand the issue. And I don't think that anybody is surprised. I mean, we've had conversations. I know in the county council, in the budget that the county council has just approved yesterday, that there's more money in for counseling and social well-being in schools. There's a real challenge, I think, that we're seeing everywhere, that there are emotional issues and social well-being issues amongst, mental health issues with our students and with our youth. And we've got to figure out how to get a handle on that. And it's coming out and it's manifesting itself in crimes and in violent crimes. And I think police are certainly a part of the solution, but I don't believe that they are the solution. We've got to look at more of the root causes. And I think that's a much harder thing to address because it's going to cost resources, and you've actually got to be able to connect with all those students.
Well, look, I get all the resource needs at the school level, but the fact is, as a county, we're having difficulty retaining and attracting police officers to serve our communities. So there are messages going out that Montgomery County is soft on crime. At least it looks like to me. I'm not sure if everyone has that perception, but it sure looks that way to me.
Well, I guess I would query that a little bit, because I don't think I haven't seen any indication that people are soft on crime. I think we're seeing an increase in crime. And so the challenge is, what's the cause and how do we begin to address it? And I think it is twofold. I think we recognize that we have to figure out how to get police officers with the tools and resources that they need, while at the same time understanding the mental health and emotional challenges that our students and children are facing as a result of spending 2.5 years in the pandemic.
Okay, well, Laurie, I want to go to you now because you know, in the article that I sent out to everyone, County Council member Craig Rice was quoted as saying, "We need to throw everything at the wall on this one." Will that include reversing some of the anti-police measures enacted by the council during the past 2 years? Or will there be even a recognition that they're partially to blame?
Yes, it's interesting that he said that. I think Craig Rice, he's a politician and he kind of moves wherever the wind blows. And he used to be in favor of school resource officers, and then he changed his tune when the whole defund the police movement came in. Now he's going back the other direction. So I feel that when you look at, and also Mark Elrich, he made a comment that there's an ungluing of things. And I think they need to face the fact that some of their own policies have really led to some of these problems. For example, because they kept kids at home during the pandemic, we see a huge learning loss in our schools. Even in our finest schools, we're seeing way low proficiency rates. We're also seeing that we're not working, our county doesn't work with ICE officials. So when we have people who are committing serious crimes who are here illegally, they're not working with ICE to get them deported. We also see that a number of regulations are being added, and they're making government bigger and adding more groups to check up on businesses, and doing that makes things harder on parents who are business owners, who make it harder for them to be parents to their kids because they're so busy working with all these things that are required of them by our county. So, you know, these things are all leading to mental health issues and all this. A lot of it could have been avoided if we had let our kids be in school and if we had just let ICE do their job.
Well, I don't think from an ICE perspective. I mean, sadly, most of the violent crime that we've seen has had nothing to do with immigration. Have been local residents who have had challenges trying to cope with the situation that they're dealing with, which doesn't justify the situation by a stretch of the imagination. But to think that somehow ICE was going to save the lives of the two students that were up here in Northwest in Germantown would not have done anything. The reality is clearly those students had mental health challenges that need to be addressed, and we haven't had the resources to help them get those addressed.
We're seeing that MS-13 is having clashes with local gangs, and a lot of our kids coming in to MS-13 are coming from out of the country. So I think it does have something to do with the increase in crimes that we're seeing.
It may, but I think that becomes a much too simple solution to say that somehow that's going to solve the problem when we're seeing violent crime pervasively throughout the county.
I mean, we're seeing crimes at all different levels. Right. Car thefts, break-ins, violence. We're seeing, unfortunately, a rise in crime at all levels. And you know, for a county and a community that's always prided itself on its safe environment and good policing, it's coming as a shock. We're going to go on to our last topic, you know, which today, and fans of this show know that we tape the program generally on the Friday before airing over the weekend. So today has been declared Bike to Work Day. It's I guess it's national and maybe even worldwide Bike to Work Day. And participants were encouraged to do so with offerings of prizes and such. I heard a lot of different contests on the radio. Now, elected officials have tried mightily to get commuters out of their cars and into other forms of transportation, particularly public transportation. But according to a new study, when it comes to the daily commute, the automobile remains king. Laurie, does it come as a surprise to know that the DC area commuters rely on public transportation more than commuters in any other urban area except New York?
I think it makes sense, but it's not really changing over the years. When you look at statistics since 1970, 80% of commuters were using their cars to get to work, and it's the same percentage today. So all these efforts by our politicians to improve it is not changing, because people prefer cars. And because of the massive changes with the pandemic, where more people are at home now, working from home, and that's the cheapest way is to work from home. There's no commute at all. But I think the key is, if we do have a transit system, it needs to be, which we do here, and I think our metro system is somewhat reliable. I think reliability is very important for any transit system, because you don't want to have to wait and not know if your bus is going to come or your train is going to come. So we really need to have something that we can count on, and something that will get us from point A to point B as quickly as possible.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, Laurie, but two officials just resigned from Metro, and it was partially because of lack of competence. And
yeah, there's still major problems with the Metro.
So there's still major problems here. Mike, the study found that 10 to 15% of commuters take public transportation, and that Metro Rail and Metro Bus ridership has been declining since 2010, long before COVID came into effect. So how do we balance this need and desire for people to use their own private transportation with the need to have, mass transit?
Well, it continues to be the challenge that we face here in Montgomery County as an urban suburban community. We ostensibly want to be able to say everyone should commute, but the reality is we don't have the density, nor do we have the infrastructure to allow for that to occur. You just can't get there from here. If we're an urban area like the District of Columbia, where you could actually get people around and you could get to jobs, and you get to the doctors, you get to a store and get back on a bus and get, because there's a regular enough way to do that, you might be able to pull that off, but you can't do that. You can't get from Aspen Hill to Germantown in any meaningful way using public transportation. You just can't do it. And so to continue to try and tell people that that's going to happen is a pipe dream. There are certain corridors you can use it on. We've got to make it more effective and more efficient. But ultimately, you've got to make your land use patterns be such a way that you can actually support it with mass transit if that's your objective. And in Montgomery County, every time we talk about increasing density, everybody screams bloody murder. So you can't have it both ways. And that's the challenge that we have right now in Montgomery County and continue to have.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, gas prices are so high right now. I think that is probably also influencing people's decision to take Metro, but who otherwise would not. So that's a factor.
We're not even going to get into the gas energy crisis. That's way above our pay grade here in Montgomery County. Although we are Montgomery County, so we think we can solve the world's problems. Sure. We're going to stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Laurie Halverson.
I just want to say that my heart goes out to all the moms out there and dads who are struggling with finding baby formula for their babies. It's such a serious problem right now. I was at the Giant yesterday and noticed the empty aisles where the baby formula is supposed to be. I just am baffled by how this is happening, and I don't understand why the Biden administration is not declaring this an emergency and getting the Department of Health and Human Services involved, or trying to work with companies like Trump did when we needed ventilators. I feel like something should be happening to really ramp up the production of baby formula, and I just don't know how families are coping with this problem right now, and it just breaks my heart.
A lot of issues there. Mike Knapp, your parting shot.
Thank you. I just wanted to note the passing of former county executive Sid Kramer. He passed at 96. Sid Kramer and his family have been leaders and representatives in our community for the last 45 years. Sid was a county council member, was a state senator, was county executive. He and his wife were strong advocates for the arts in Montgomery County when he was no longer elected office. His son and daughter, Ben and Rona, both state senators and have been state senators, and just have shown what leadership and how to lead with compassion and to help Montgomery County continue to grow and thrive. And the county is better for having had him, and a little bit less now that he's passed.
Well, wonderful sentiments, Mike. Thank you for sharing those. I want to thank the panel for being here this week. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.